Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Right Angle Podcast. I'm Timothy Carasolis.
And I'm Ewan Petty.
And today we are back. So we've been on a bit of a hiatus. We've been doing our thing. We have not been uploading, though. But we are back and ready to go, energized. And today we have a very special episode. So you may be used to more of a news-style factual reporting, but things are going to be changing today. So, Ewan, please introduce what we're up to.
So today we'll be interviewing Lorenzo A. Rios, who is a candidate for California's 21st Congressional District.
Now, Lorenzo A. Rios, for listeners inside of District 21, what exactly does the district cover? This is not the first question, don't worry. But we just have a quick question before. What does the district cover? As we know in Prop 50, it changed up the district lines a little bit. And so we just have to ask, what does the district that you're running for cover?
Well, there's two parts to this answer. The first part is, thank you for recognizing me as Lorenzo A. Rios. He's the handsome, tall son of mine. I'm Lorenzo P. Rios, the older guy. So I'm just letting you know, it's Lorenzo A. Rios. He's the junior. Lorenzo P. Rios, he's the senior. So you've got Lorenzo P. Rios, the senior. No, don't be. I'm flattered. He's a 6'3", good-looking young man.
Don't worry, you're the same too.
No. So I welcome that. And he's the commercial airline pilot who does some great stuff. I'm really proud of my son. I've got 3 boys, by the way. I know you didn't ask, but I'd let you know. All Eagle Scouts, by the way. And the question you were asking is, what boundaries does District 21 encompass? It's a beautiful, I think it's one of the most beautiful districts there is because of the area that it encompasses. It encompasses from Fresno, about the Old Fig area, Herndon, south along the 99, all the way down to Visalia. Visalia, where the 198 cuts it, that is the southern boundary. So the 99 from Fresno to Visalia, that's your western boundary. From Visalia across to Woodlake along the 198, that's your southern boundary. A little dogleg of Exeter. Unfortunately, after Prop 50, they cut out most of Exeter, but we still have a little dogleg there. So I want folks to know that I love them. I'm still out there looking for them. Even though they've been cut out, I still see all of Exeter as part of my community, and I want to continue to care for them. Woodlake back up to Reedley, that's your eastern boundary. And then Reedley back to Clovis along the 180, that's your northern boundary. And this time with Prop 50, they've added Tarpey. So from the 180 all the way up to 5th Street along Sunnyside, that is all of District 21. And whereas Fresno State was cut out before, Fresno State is now part of District 21. That's a new addition as well.
Yeah. So if you are in the district, make sure to cast in your votes for your candidate. I mean, obviously, we want to make sure everyone knows where they're at. And
Absolutely.
Can put in their votes.
And I would tell you, it doesn't matter. If they're listening to this, make sure that your vote does not stay on your counter or your coffee table past June 2nd. Because, one, you are contributing to whatever the response is. And if you're not happy with where we're at right now, if your vote does not get into a ballot box, then just realize, look in the mirror, because you're responsible for whatever happens on June 3rd. And so it's critical that everybody does their part, and that is to submit their vote. Now, of course, if you're within those boundaries and you haven't submitted your vote yet, yes, a vote for Rios would be greatly appreciated.
Definitely. And so with that, we're going to get straight into question 1. Thank you so much for coming again, Lorenzo Rios.
Yes,
we're happy to have you, and let's get into it.
Yes, let's do it.
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing.
So question 1, this one's going to be about military and leadership. Your military background definitely precedes you and shows you have what it takes to lead. Retiring as a lieutenant colonel means you have many years of experience under your belt. With that in mind, how has your military career shaped your leadership style, and more importantly, how you treat people every day?
What you discover in the military, it's not the weapons, it's not the tools, it's the people. And it requires leaders to realize that their strength is in first listening and leveraging the talent of the people in making sure that the mission is accomplished. I'm a believer that leaders eat last, and the reason you do that is to make sure that your people, your team, are well cared for. And as a good leader, you listen to what they have to say, because some of the best ideas come from the people that you're leading, and you share with them the situation to develop a common operating picture so that we go and address the issue together. The success of a leader in the military is developing strong teams that feel empowered to make decisions, and the leader does that's necessary to underwrite their mistakes as long as they're exercising disciplined initiative. And disciplined initiative is a reflection on the leader's ability to communicate, here's the goals, here's the mission, here's how we're doing it. But they're able to accomplish that when the leader listens, serves, and ensures that the people have what they need. And I think here in the Valley, we can agree that our community is talking, but the representatives are not listening, and therefore they're not providing the community with the tools that they need to be successful. And that's the first thing that needs to stop. We need to stop having public servants who forget that they are here to be servants. That means they serve the people. It's not the other way around where the people are serving the people in those positions. It's time to turn it around. I want to come in, I want to listen, and I've been listening this last year. I've been knocking on doors, listening to people, and I want to make sure that their needs are covered. And that starts with good employment, lowering of cost, making sure that the unemployment is replaced with employment, and that's why trades and I think are so important. You don't necessarily need a college degree to be successful, but you do need a good job. And I think here in the Valley, one of the most fruitful, most dynamic, most diverse Valley, very talented, needs to be better served.
And I appreciate so much for you mentioning teamwork. I mean, realistically, that's what we need.
Absolutely.
I mean, without unity, we're going to be a mess. We're scrambling around. And with the right leader, so much can get done so efficiently, so fast. And it's so important that we are all unified together. And I mean, realistically, what can we do without unity?
We can become unified again.
Well, and you all saw, you were at the Memorial Day program just on Monday. Not only did we honor the fallen and the families to let them know that they're not here alone, that they're not suffering by themselves. Their loss is all of our loss, and we walked the grounds together. But what you saw that day was not an incredible program provided by one organization. What you saw was an incredible program provided by one community. We brought diverse groups together to serve the community, and you see, that is my vision for the Valley. I believe that I'm not the smartest man in the room. I do believe that I'm the hardest working man that is willing to work with others that already have the answers, but perhaps need some resources and some connections, and that is my responsibility to help them connect, provide them the resources. I think one of the most powerful resources that this office has is the power of convene and confer. Bring the organizations together, do some cross-leveling of information, share best practices, resources those best practices to ensure that we see some changes in the Valley that address the needs that the Valley says is important. Not what I say, but what the Valley says. So how do we answer the requests that the people are asking for, and we serve them? That's what I'm looking for. That's why my approach is a Valley first, Valley strong. If it doesn't serve the Valley and it doesn't help it be really mature to be the strongest position, then that's not my priority.
I would agree with you on that.
Thank you so much. And then you and Petty, question 2.
So our next question is, what policies would you propose? As we all know, immigration is a hot topic in the U.S. right now. What policies would you propose to reform our immigration system? And then after that, I have a follow-up question.
Well, I think that, one, you're spot on. Immigration is an incredible point of discussion right now. I want you to know that is a very personal point of discussion for me. I wasn't born in the United States. For transparency, you need to know that. The first time I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States was in the summer of 1989 when I became a naturalized citizen. It was one of the proudest afternoons of my life, and I got to swear in as a citizen just before I took my oath once again as an enlisted Marine. And those two moments were the pinnacle of my transition to transformation into an impassioned American, because I had finally become what I had aspired to be, and that there's a story behind that, and we can address it later. But the reason I share that with you is because being a citizen and being an American is so powerfully important to me, and I still remember where I come from. I come from the orchards. I'm an immigrant and a migrant worker who loves the people that are from the orchards because I am one of them. Those people aren't those that are separate. They, for me, are my community. I speak Spanish to this day. I know how to put out ladder. I know how to thin. I personally think I'm the world's best apple thinner, but I'm sure somebody will challenge me on that. I take pride in the values that we're taught when working in the fields. I don't look down at those days as something less than. I take those days as those days that help shape the man that I am today. I think there's dignity that needs to be required of any policy that moves forward. For me, there's three attributes: order, dignity, and stability. One, we must secure the border. We close our doors at night because we want to make sure that who comes into our home is welcomed in. And I want to make sure that those who come into our country are welcomed in, and we must have order, and that first part needs to be there. But we must have dignity. And that dignity is of all people. That is who we are as an American, as one nation. So I think dignity is required. And then stability. We have to have a stable force and a stable pathway. So here in the Valley, I think the agriculture requirements, the construction requirements, there are so many different demands that immigrant labor addresses. We need to make sure that the needs of that industry is addressed, but the dignity of the people that are coming in needs to be protected, but there needs to be a process that is orderly and attainable. You shouldn't have to take 20 plus years and so much of your money to try to become a legalized person of any condition. I think there has to be a method, and there are folks who have no desire to stay here, but they do have a desire to come and work. There needs to be a pathway that allows them to come, address the need, work, and be able to return. Where we create pathways so that folks can come across the border legally and dignified without having to cross the border, paying coyotes in an illegal manner, risking their lives, that's ridiculous. And when we create conditions that promote that reality, we're part of the problem. And when we have legislators who are out there demonizing the enforcement of it, they are the problem. They need to remember who they are and who they serve. They need to be on the House floor litigating forward a bill that can pass the House of Representatives and the Senate so that the President of the United States can sign it into law that represents the values of our great nation and addresses the needs of our economy. I believe that this is not an either or, this is an and. We can have both. We can have stable immigration that addresses the modern requirements and still have dignity where people do not have to fear living here in the United States. I think that's un-American.
Very true. The follow-up question is, would you support the bill that is being put forth or was put forth recently called the Dignity Act?
Oh, yes. Yeah, the Dignity Act is actually a great initiative that moves towards that objective. And so I would support, once again, those three attributes: order, dignity, and stability. Where that bill addresses those three attributes, I would support it. And so I'm really happy to see, I think it was introduced July of 2025, and so we're seeing it move through the House. I would like to see, I think this is the first step that moved us in the right direction. And I apologize. You had asked me what initiatives would I support. The immigration initiative is, I think the reform is one of the highest priorities. But I would also tell you water. Water is life. And so if we don't focus on water, all the other things almost go to the side. And so I think that we need to look at water because water allows us to grow food. Food is a national security issue. Think about a day that you don't drink water or eat food. You can do many things, but for us to survive, we need those two things. And we must not be importing them in. We need to be able to grow it ourselves. That is what allows our nation to be sustainable and defensible. And where we create conditions that require us to import any of those realities, we are purposely putting America in a position of weakness. And like I told you, Valley strong, Valley first. So therefore, my position for America must be an America strong, America first. You cannot have a strong America if you can't feed America. And you can't feed America if you don't let the water flow where the food grows, and that's here in the Central Valley. And while we currently feed the country and the nation and the world, we now need the federal government to see us accordingly, that we are that critical. And so I would just tell you, besides immigration, which I think is absolutely important. I think water infrastructure, conveyance, recharge, on all of the above has to be a priority. So for me, those are critical points.
Definitely. And I'm actually very happy that you brought up water is national security. I actually have a question about that. So
Oh,
I'll
fantastic.
switch things up a little bit. I'll go to that one straight. So you frequently made the statement that agricultural or water is a national security. For someone living in a major city who believes food just magically appears on grocery shelves, break down why the threat to the valley farmers is actually a threat to the entire nation.
Well, I will tell you this. When we don't grow food, the shelves aren't stocked. And so it doesn't take very long before we figure out that if the shelves aren't stocked, we're not going to eat. And if we don't have the means to grow, then we just have figured out how to die. And I will tell you, I didn't fight to defend this nation just to come back here and manage the decline. I don't believe it's an either or, it's an and. I believe that the urban centers need to be able to grow and be resourced with quality food. But that quality food, I would tell you, needs to be grown here. Because when you import, and when you import anything, you also import the politics of wherever you got it. If you import it from China, you're also importing the politics that come with it. How well do they care for their soil? What ingredients do they put into their food? You are importing that reality. How do they treat their workers? You are importing that reality. I think it's important that where we have high standards, we make sure that we live those values. And that means here locally, we care for our workers. We care for our soil. We care for the food that we eat. Organic food is something that more and more people are seeking. Well, I will tell you, you only understand it when you understand how the soil must be cared for and the conditions under which it is being, whether it's being cultivated. It's difficult to hold those standards other places. So therefore, I would say we need to go back to a reality that brings common sense into the dialogue. And I think it's an and. So for me, we must look at everything and above. When you have almost 1 million acre feet of water that's being lost just because of a crumbling infrastructure, that means that you invest in the infrastructure and you automatically got 1 million acre feet of water. There's some lunacy here that we're not accepting, and this is where we have to take accountability for our lack of action. Do you realize we are still working on infrastructure that is 100 years old? Think about that. That's at least 10 generations that have not done anything to upgrade. So now we have to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, if the conditions that we're living in right now are unacceptable, the question is, what have we done to add to the infrastructure that our forefathers have provided us? And the sad answer is we haven't. We've done more to restrict it and then be surprised that we don't have enough resource. We don't lack the resource. We have a management issue. We don't have a water shortage. We have a management of water. And so this is where we need to stop with these agendas that don't address the people, that instead address either a political party or some international funder. We need to go back to serving the people. And I think where we do that, the policies change.
Very great answer. Thank you so much for that. Question for you and Petty.
And our next question is, as we all know, education is a hot topic in the U.S. right now, as we're seeing test scores that are not very good. So what are some policies that you can support in Congress or legislative to help bring about an increase in the literacy of American children?
Oh my gosh, that's such an important piece. Well, first of all, I will tell you, the literacy needs to be something that as they graduate high school, you should have the conditions to be an active and engaged citizen. We need to expect more from graduates of a high school with a high school diploma. Currently, not only can they not read, they're not employable because we've done everything to prevent them from being able to get a job. Right now, we will protect immigrants to be able to work in the fields, but the kids that are working in the field, if we applied it to any high school student, you will find that we'll have all the conditions as to why that high school student can't work. They have to have a certain GPA, they have to have a permission from the school, but there's no requirement for that immigrant child who's out there. So this is where the hypocrisy needs to end. This is where we need to have standards. And so I will tell you, this is one of my personal concerns. I think that as you're going through school, not only do you learn how to read and write, you also develop the work skills, the social skills associated with getting work training. So this is where I would like to see internships and apprenticeships. I think the best social program that's out there is a job. And so imagine now having some credits that go to the business to be able to bring in students who are on pathways that allow them to have HVAC, construction, concrete, masonry, asphalt, trades that we need, which, by the way, AI is not going to take away, right? Yeah. We have trades that we need. Not only do we provide a trained skill set in the workforce right now so these businesses can flourish with talent that is local, but the people that are in those training programs are also learning from the workforce environment, which I'm going to tell you, that environment is the best learning lab possible in creative problem solving, interpersonal skills, time management. This is where I believe the true learning lab is now complementing the theoretical lab that's taking place in the schools. It doesn't have to be an either or. Once again, I think we can find an and, a one that complements the two. And this is where I think the schools need to also get a report card, because when you're the employer and you're looking at the school and saying, this student doesn't know the difference between a quarter, an eighth, and a 16th, you need to be able to look at that math teacher and say, hey, school, your math is not up to par. When they can't read the basic instructions on a document, you go back to that English teacher and say, they can't read. This is more than, this is where I'm trying to wake everybody up. This is a national security issue. When we have a workforce that is unemployable, where we have an industry that is unsustainable, where we can no longer manufacture, where we can no longer sustain the infrastructure, where we fail to invest in the supply chains. The 99 and the 5 are the two arterials that provide supply north and south in the largest, most significant economy in the world. It's fourth largest. I would argue we could easily go up to the third and or second largest if we would remove all of the shackles that we have imposed on ourselves, from reduced water to failing infrastructure. That's all by choice. These are failed policies. And this is where we, the people, need to remember that we're sovereign. And two, we must remember that when the government no longer represents us, we must revolt. And the way we revolt is by the vote. Every 2 years, we have the ability to revolt. And this is where we do a performance evaluation. If the folks that we've hired are not doing their job, it's time for them to go. And so every 2 years, we clean up our house. Every 4 years, we change out the executive. Every 6 years, we change out the Senate. I'm talking federal government right now, right? We have the same system for the state of California. And so this is where I'm calling on everyone to realize, if you want to make a change, this is where Michael Jackson comes to mind. What, do you remember that song? If you want to make a change, you got to start with and I want to change it. He said the man in the mirror. I'm going to say, if you want to make a change, you got to start with the person in the mirror. So when you look in the mirror, if that person has not voted, then realize the person looking back at you is part of the problem. And when you're part of the problem, you can also be part of the solution. So I hope I've answered your question. It starts with, let's getting back to real world performance. Your first report card is, can you do the job? And if you can't do the job, then you understand why math is so important. You now know why reading is so important. For a lot of the kids right now, it's theoretical. And until you get past the theoretical into the practical, there's no reason, there's no incentive to learn. And I'm saying, let's give them a hands-on approach to learning. And when you complement those two realities, I think there'll be more motivation to learn, and there'll be a greater incentive, because if you can earn while you learn, then you're also becoming independent, and you start learning the importance of $1. As long as it's given to you, you have no idea. So this is how we bring all of the academia into a practical reality.
And then, did you have a candidate in mind for state superintendent of public instruction?
You know, that one's I'm still, they're all on the ballot for me. I would love to hear them engage. What you guys are doing is something courageous. And I'm going to tell you, one of the concerns I have right now is that not enough people are forcing these candidates to answer questions where you can look at them all and see them answer the questions, not with preset answers, but answers that address the question that you pose at the moment and be able to put them side by side. The media hasn't done it. They've been remarkably quiet. I have been asking the media to bring us out and ask the questions. I saw a small groups who have held these small little forums in the park. I was able to go out there, and let me tell you, that is how the civic culture and this democratic process grows, when people get to hear these folks, when all of a sudden the spotlight isn't pretty, when the picture isn't perfect, and the setting hasn't given them all the answers. This is where we want to see them actually answer. And what I have found has been we haven't had enough of that. So I'm holding out on this. I'm still doing some more homework on that. I will tell you, I will have an answer before June 2nd. But I would, I'll tell you, if you guys can get these guys on a podcast and get them to answer the questions, good on you. But right now, the only answers that we're getting, and here's the sad part, I would offer that we are being fed more propaganda than facts, because it's the polished hit pieces that are being put out in these little videos that people are now taking as facts. That's propaganda. Those are not facts. When you see the perfect candidate with the perfect lighting, with the perfect message, that's an imperfect reality of how to feed yourself the critical information you need to make critical decisions. And right now, I would offer you, our journalistic curiosity has been put in the back burner. Propaganda is what I'm seeing pushed forward. And when you see bills like what you see with Assemblywoman Banta, who is criminalizing independent journalists who find fraud, that tells you everything. The media is no longer set up to give us facts for us to be able to discern. We are now being fed data that the state wants us to consume. That should scare all of you. And they're no longer trying to hide it. When they are willing to pass, and by the way, yesterday it passed the assembly. That should scare you. This is where I call on everybody. I don't care what district you're in. If you're in California, get off your backside and do something about it. Don't just be angry. I will tell you, you have to act, and it starts with the vote. Call your friend, hold them accountable, make sure that they have voted. And where we do this, we can take this back and we can remind people what California is all about.
All right, everyone, we are back on air, ready to go again for round number 2. You guys ready?
Absolutely.
All right, let's get right into it. So, kind of moving back, question 5 of here. This one's about veteran transitions. As the CEO of Clovis Veterans Memorial District, you focus a lot on helping veterans transition back into civilian life. Now, this hits close to home for us, me and Ewan. My grandpa was in the Air Force and Ewan's uncle in the Navy. We've seen them transition very smoothly and back into the civilian life. But from what you see every day, what is the hardest part of coming home that everyday civilians like us are not able to see?
Well, there's a couple things. Modernity has provided us opportunities that our forefathers didn't have. One example is World War II. It took almost a month to get back from foreign lands back into the CONUS, or the continental U.S., and then the time from the port of embarkation when they returned to back to their respective homes. There was a time, and all of those windows of time added for decompression, and those realities change the dynamics. Now, I can tell you that you can be in a firefight and that afternoon be on a flight to come home and be able to see your child be born. That's the kind of reality. What that creates is it's a great opportunity to not miss those milestones. I can tell you, I was doing a joint patrol in the Balkans, and I was able to finish that joint patrol, get on a flight on a C-130, and I was able to be home just not even an hour before my son, my first child, was born. That reality, as I walked into that room, I was still wearing my fatigues, and for me, it was still the reality of where I was at. I had troops in Iraq where we would have just been involved in serious contact with the enemy, and the stresses that come with it, and then they flew back home, and now they were at home, and now they're dealing with the stresses of home. When you're overseas, you learn to create a bubble of space around you that you don't want anyone near you. And then when you come home, that bubble is removed because now everybody wants to touch you and hug you. And not having any time to process that can really cause some challenge, some psychological challenges. It's not because the person doesn't love them. It's just they're still in that mentality of the war zone, and now they're at home. And I will tell you, the most dangerous battlefront that I have seen is no longer the battlefront of the fields of combat, but the home front, the field of comfort and love, where the conversation is not one that actually communicates the understanding. There's a disconnect right now. I see a lot of our heroes who come back, and as soon as you hang up the uniform, what we discover is that everything that we were taught doesn't necessarily translate into the civilian world. The candid conversations in the military, you respect someone who is very clear in communicating to you. If you're late, they communicate that you were late. If the uniform does not look right, they tell you that uniform does not look right. If you walk up to somebody today and you first say, "Hey, Lorenzo, you're late, and that uniform, I'm not sure what you decided to put on, but where the lights were on when you put that stuff on, this does not work." Now, you might be doing it out of true kindness because you're being honest, right? But now that's considered toxic. That is considered too aggressive. And all of a sudden, the same values that equaled success, rewarded now in the civilian world, are now being reasons for being castigated. And HR is now knocking on your door saying, "Hey, Lorenzo, we need to talk to you about the way you talked to your friend today." And that is challenge number one. Challenge number two, everyone that we work with look like us, use the same words, and by all accounts are us, our fellow Americans. But whether you served a year in the reserves, active duty, the Guard, or 31 years, every minute that you were in, you were taught how not to be a civilian. You were taught to be a warrior. One of the challenges that I see is we do very little to transition the warrior back into the civilian. And that challenge is one of our biggest gaps that we need to address. So when you talk about the veterans programs that we've been focused on, that's what I've been committed to. I have dedicated my time to making sure the things that I did not have as I transitioned out of the military, you can either be very angry about it and frustrated that it didn't exist, or you can take it as a blessing. And I choose to take it as a blessing because sometimes God shows you through experience what is there that needs to be fixed. And you can either be shaped by it and become very angry, or you can accept the frustration and realize that this should not be passed on to somebody else. If you didn't like it for yourself, you don't want it for somebody else. Example, when you leave, in order to get something done, they bounce you around multiple offices. Most bureaucrats don't care that they just told you that you showed up too late, so therefore they can't talk to you. You got to come back tomorrow, and you have to be in during a certain window, and you have to have it filled a certain form out, but you didn't know about what that form was until you got there, and you didn't know about it until you waited for hours online to get in there, and now they tell you, we can't help you because you didn't have this form, and we only do these and process these on these days. That's ridiculous. Yeah. And you're trying to do this while you're trying to take care of your family. Your family's now no longer cared for the entire time you were in the military. When you moved, the system was set up to not only provide you the transportation that set up the house on the other side, family would move. Now you leave the military, and I call it the yard sale. Have you ever been on a ski hill where you accidentally go down a black diamond, but you were on the bunny hill? Now, when you go from a bunny hill to a diamond, you are going to discover what momentum looks like and what physics looks like. And the yard sale that I refer to is what I would show when I go down a diamond by accident. And that means there goes my gloves, there goes my skis, and you just it's one of the ugly moments going down as you go down the hill. And as you look back up the hill, you see all of your equipment. That's almost what it feels like when you leave the military. And some communities have done a great job of setting that transition so that they know that that reality is going to be there, so they're there to prepare them. Other communities have no awareness, and therefore it feels like that crazy downslope yard sale. I have dedicated my time to working with organizations that are here to serve our veterans, but because they work in silos, this is why people with good intentions don't necessarily create good outcomes. If you come into the office and you can't process it, you have to go to another office and now say Ewan is the person who stamps it in order to move forward. Now you're going across the community. So working at the Memorial District, what I did was I collaborated with all of them, brought them into a room, create the conditions that when the veteran comes in, the customer and the most important person is that veteran and their family. And we make sure that we honor them and protect the dignity of the process and let them know that as you go through the process, we've done the homework for you so that you go through and are successful. And when you leave, you have the resources that you need. When it comes to employment, we get them in, we work with them, we coach them in their resume, we maintain, go through and address their skills. We work to make sure that they have a good haircut, they got their uniform looks right. If they don't have a suit, we have great organizations that provide those suits. All that to say is we make sure that we help them transition. And so the challenges that I have seen has been there's a disconnect between the values, the mission, and what I'm telling folks is when you leave the military, you don't disconnect. It's just a change of mission. And what I'm working with veterans to make sure that we keep that same warrior spirit, that same leader that was developed, because it doesn't matter if you're an officer or enlisted. It doesn't matter if you were in there a month, a year. The time that you were spent was developing a leader and a warrior who looks at problems not as reasons why you can't accomplish them, but instead a puzzle for you to solve. And the impossible is possible. That's what you learn while you're in the military. I want us to keep that a skill set as they transition into civilian life. I would argue this is how we improve communities, by keeping that warrior spirit with that leadership attitude, where they now help build teams of teams and bring this attitude that everything is possible. This is how our community gets stronger, our valley gets stronger, our state gets stronger, our country becomes the great nation that I know it is. So that's how I see it. And yes, it is a challenge, not an impossible challenge. I consider it a puzzle that is possibly solved, but it's going to require all of us to work together, and that's what's my commitment to it. And I would argue this is indicative of my attitude towards the puzzles that I see in the Valley. You're talking about veterans. I will tell you, as I look at the Valley, as I'm knocking on doors, single-family homes are now multi-generational homes. Grandma's house is no longer just Grandma's house. Grandma's house has mom and dad and has brothers and sisters sometimes have their own kids in there. These are little ecosystems of pressure cookers of families who have done what they can to take care of each other, but the system has forced them to kind of collapse into one space, and that is one of the challenges that we need to help get them into homes that are affordable, where they can afford to now live the American dream here in the Valley and not have to leave the Valley to find that opportunity. So veterans are a concern of mine, but so are the rest of the Valley and the citizens that live in there. And right now they are surviving government. We got to change that. They should now have the conditions where they can thrive. That to have them just barely survive is un-American as far as I'm concerned.
I just wanted to also give a quick thank you to you for helping all of our veterans, and then also thank you to our veterans for all of you've done for us so we could live in this, this amazing, beautiful country. I live, knowing I could sleep at night, knowing that I have food on the table, and none of this would have been possible if it wasn't for brave veterans who, died for not my life, not knowing whether, 50 years in the future, I would be here. They just did it completely out of their own will, their heart, and I just want to say thank you so much.
No, thank you very much for your service and for all our veterans' service.
America is worth fighting for, and I thank you for your support. I would tell you the best way of saying thank you to a veteran is make that sacrifice matter. And this is what I mean by that. Americans who fight to defend this nation are known as veterans. Less than 1% have taken on that oath. 100% of America and those who come to America benefit from the freedoms provided in defense of a way of life, and that's the Constitution of the United States. There's a responsibility that comes with it. And the way you make that sacrifice matter is doing your part to be good citizens. And that starts with what you're doing right now, asking the questions, being engaged, and encouraging all of our fellow Americans to do their part. And that is start with making sure that those who represent us remember that they are public servants sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. And this is where we, the people, are sovereign, and we do our part to hold them accountable to do their part. Because when we just look back, we sit back and just enjoy the benefit, but don't take the responsibility and the accountability, then we are part of the problem of what has allowed the system to go so far off the rail. So I appreciate your kind words, and I would just tell you, keep doing what you're doing, stay engaged, because that's the best way you make the sacrifice matter, by protecting that which was defended.
Thank you so much. And then you and Petty, question 6 and 7.
So I'm glad that you brought up housing. So one of our questions is, as housing is a hot issue right now and families are trying to purchase a home, would you support legislation that bans companies that are worth more than a certain amount from buying single-family households? And if so, what would the amount that a company has to be worth less than in order to be able to purchase a home be?
Well, there's two parts to that. I want to make sure that I do not believe in creating lids that prevent entrepreneurship. That said, I think it's important and critical that we have independence and the American public has access to affordable homes. Once again, I don't see this as an either or. I'm concerned when government becomes the arbiter of entrepreneurship and we start putting lids. But I also believe that we have to make sure that the conditions have been set for the American public to thrive. And so under those conditions, I would like for us to look at that puzzle a little bit more and make sure that, one, we're not getting foreign corporations to come in here and start buying America one house at a time and now making serfs out of our American public because they can't afford to access homes. I think that's ridiculous. We need to make sure the sovereignty of our nation is protected, but the sanctity of the family is protected, and having access to affordable houses is necessary. Right now, here's an example. Who here drives a electric vehicle? Exactly. But if you're going to buy a house right now, you have a requirement to put an electric vehicle charger in your home. That's another $30,000 that's been added to your home. Come on. This is where we have overregulated to the point where we cannot have access to the basic home that we want and we need. We need to start alleviating the regulation. And this is why I think who we elect as governor is going to be so critical, because regulations aren't laws. Regulation is the fourth branch of government that is not written in the Constitution, and that's the administrative state, which we must be careful of, because the administrative state is the agency that has been created by electeds, but the electeds don't have control over them. The bureaucrats now have the management of that agency. The electeds have oversight, but this is where agency bureaucrats now take control and instill and put us under this pressure cooker that, quite frankly, the governor's pen could remove a lot of those layers. So that's a long answer to a short question, but I think it's a more complex situation. But when you start looking at common sense, you can start seeing how we can remove some of these layers that don't belong and create the conditions to bring them in as we are able to afford them. But to put them in so that we can no longer even access our homes, that's problem number one. This is where you're serving policy. This is where you're serving a party. You are forgetting that you are serving people. When you leave people behind, you have failed. You asked me about my military experience. Not only do as an officer, you learn how to listen and you learn how to empower, you also remember you leave no one behind. And this is part of what I bring to this office, my desire to serve my community and empower the people of this valley.
Well, thank you very much. Our next question is, even though as the filibuster is a hot topic in the U.S. right now, and you don't have much say in it in Congress at least, would you lobby senators to abolish the filibuster in order to pass other legislative priorities?
You know, this reminds me of a saying, make haste slowly. Think about that. Make haste slowly. Our democratic process was not intended to be an efficient system. It was designed to be slow and deliberate. The deliberative process requires questions. It requires discernment and dialogue. Where you remove the control measures that force you to slow the process down, that forces you to collaborate and find consensus, that creates a dangerous system, and I would not be supportive of it. Here's an example. Look at what happens in Sacramento right now. Sacramento right now, with the supermajority, just pushes through, and we are, in Spanish they go from Guatemala, Guatepeor. It rhymes a little bit more effectively, right? But it goes from bad to worse. And we're seeing worse coming at us at lightning speed. Where you remove some of those systems, you also remove some of the safeguards that were intentionally put in place to slow down the process to make sure that the policy, the laws that are passed are one that are reflective of the needs of the people. So that's my initial position on that. Now, give me some time and experience, and perhaps I would see something different. But up front, our democratic process requires this system to engage in the deliberative process. And when you remove those conditions that force the deliberative process, you risk the consequences of a system that is reactive as opposed to being responsive.
And unchecked.
And unchecked, absolutely.
Moving on to question 8. Thank you so much for that, Lorenzo. We're moving on to the cost of living. This was another youth-based question. I had a lot of people talk to me about their concern with the cost of living.
Absolutely.
So, Valley families are getting hit from all sides right now with inflation, high utility bills, and gas prices. If you win the seat in Congress, what is one concrete, practical federal policy you want to champion on day one to help small businesses and families keep more of their hard-earned money?
Look, I want to tell you that there's, my goodness, this is such a hard one because there's so many things that we need to work on. Here's an example. We have more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. We haven't even tapped to 2%. If we would tap into those reserves and incentivize the refineries so that they can come back, because we've overregulated them to the point where they've pulled out of California. We had over 40 of them in the 80s. We're down to 6, and we're expected to go down even further. We currently import. We should be an export state. We are currently importing 80% of our fuel cost. Because of that, because we're importing it, we are subject to the challenges of the international community and international relations right now. As you can tell, we are seeing a conflict in the Middle East, and that's causing a ripple effect across the board. This is another example where we are choosing to aim and shoot ourselves in the foot and then still be surprised that we shot ourselves in the foot. It's that ridiculous. I want us to see the fact that we can pull some of this regulation, and every piece that I can influence, I want to see removed, because we need to let the fuel flow, because as the fuel costs are lowered, you're going to see the transportation cost of transporting agricultural goods lower. The other part that we have to influence is water. We are currently expected to lose 35% of good farmland by choice. We're seeing more land fallow, and as we see more land fallow, that also equates to more people unemployed. As we see less food, what food is available that costs so much to transport is now costing that much more, because where there's less of a resource, it becomes a higher a stake commodity. So the demand is higher, so their cost is higher. This is where we currently have a scarcity mindset. We have a poverty of ideas, not a poverty of reality. We have a plantation mindset where we have this idea that we're just going to control the people. And right now, what do you normally hear about? The fear, right? Fear of not being able to pay your bills. Fear of not being able to provide for your kids. Fear. Fear is what control uses to manage people. That is problem number one. If we allow the water to flow, we get the ground to produce and we get to see the agricultural grow. That equates to more jobs. More jobs equals more individuals that are not on the system, taxing the system, but now contributing to the system. In other words, you're no longer on unemployment, living off of the taxes that you are the worker is paying. You are now contributing to the taxes, which lower the tax burden. This is a whole ecosystem that when we start talking about it, it's silly. But we have put ourselves into these chains that hold us back and are making us slaves. This is the part that I consider un-American. If we allow the water to flow, we get to see the food grow. Where you see the food grow, there is a bounty, which because there's more of, costs less. Where we drill and have our oil produce, we now lower the fuel cost. Where the fuel cost is lowered, the cost of transportation is lowered, the cost of food is lowered. Right now, the state is the one that sets the rates. The state is the one through its board determines whether or not the utility companies can raise the rates. They could easily reduce the rates by 50%, and right there, the cost of storage would be reduced. So when cold storage is reduced because utility cost is reduced, when your paying of your home utility bill is reduced, all of a sudden you start feeling the freedom, and you can start looking at the hope that comes with living in America, because not only can you afford to drive to the store and buy the food, you can afford to fuel your vehicle. So you're asking me a hard question, because I'm telling you, I feel like I'm coming at this and I'm fighting in every direction. We have to get the water regulations. I don't think that water is one where it's either urban or rural. It's either farming or environmental. I think it's one that common sense needs to come back into, where we recharge so that our ground, the aquifers are maintained, so that we stop seeing what we're seeing in some of these communities that are being damaged. We have to have the water flow. In Alaska, did you know in Alaska, the people that live there get a stipend every year because of the reserves that they get from exporting their oil? In Alaska, just by living in Alaska, you get a stipend every single year. In California, it sounds ridiculous, but we could actually not only do away with income tax, we could actually get a stipend for living here. This is where I'm saying this is the greatest state, and we are living in this poverty reality, and it's by choice. And I'm telling you, you want to change it where we can now afford to buy a home, start a family, not required to go to college, but actually have a good paying job that allows us, as we graduate high school, now be able to buy a home and provide for our families and find that independence. We can do that. It's that simple, but it starts with us realizing that we got to start with the person in the mirror, stop just being angry, and start doing. Be proactive, hold the people accountable. Tell me this, if you go to In-N-Out, everybody loves In-N-Out, right? And you order, what's your favorite order?
A double with whole grilled onions.
Ooh, double, hold the onions. How about you?
I'll get a number 2. I'll get my Animal Styles.
I go for animal style. Nobody here gets the double mustard grilled?
Oh, I've never.
I have tried that. It was pretty good.
I'm telling you, double mustard grilled. If you haven't tried it, try
I'm
it.
doing that today.
All right. Now, you go in for your double mustard grill this time, right? And you pay for it, right? And they give you a water. What do you say?
Where's my order?
Why? Why don't you just take your water? Just go. You paid for it, just leave. Tell me, seriously.
But you paid money for your food.
Paid for the
on
food.
it.
So what? The person behind the counter gave you your water. Why are you becoming so difficult?
Because it's money you could have spent elsewhere.
So You got water. You gave them the money. You placed the order. They gave you a thing of water. Go. Why are you being so difficult?
Also, if I paid $10 for water, I'd be kind of distraught
Why are you guys being so difficult?
because I went to In-N-Out for In-N-Out.
All of a sudden, when you put it in those terms, you go, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. Ask yourself, we have paid billions of dollars for a train to nowhere and got nothing. We were taxed to have dams put up, and we've received nothing. We passed a bill that said we wanted laws enforced, and because right now what I learned is if you're a person who is an alcoholic, you can go to a treatment center. But if you are abusing drugs, you go to a recovery center. Now, if you're doing both, you now can't, and you need mental health. This is where the laws all of a sudden have found excuses as to why we can't provide you the resources. We passed a law, 36, I think it is, and Governor Newsom just said, no, I'm just not going to fund it. We're not going to fund it. Here's where the government, we, the American people, we, the people, have said this is what we want. Those who are behind the counter are saying, yeah, no, thank you. So, yes, is it silly to talk about going to In-N-Out and ordering a burger and getting something different and being expected to pay for it and walk away and be happy? Yes, it sounds silly. But as Americans, as Californians, that's exactly what we're living right now. We are paying for taxes to serve our community, and yet none of those taxes are going to the resources that we need. And the people that are doing everything right are falling further and further behind, not because they've done anything wrong, but because government has forgotten who they serve, and they've been held unaccountable. And it starts with the person in the mirror. And I will tell you, there's too many people who feel like they've given up hope. Votes don't matter. My vote doesn't matter. No one's going to listen to me. As long as you have that attitude, go to In-N-Out, give them the money, let them give you whatever they want, and walk out. And if you're willing to do that, keep it up. At some point, you're going to be hungry enough that you go, dang it, I asked for a double mustard grill, holy onions, and I paid for it, and I expect nothing less. It is that attitude that we need to reinstill in our American public. It doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a responsible person holding the system accountable, because when you're the boss, what you allow is what becomes reality. And right now, if the government that we have does not represent us, it is we, the people, that is responsible for holding these people that we employ, that we hired, either employed or it's time for us to fire them and get the right people in.
And I believe we talked about it in an earlier episode about you're voting, then you should get, you should get a say in what you're voting for, and you're voting for that. So that makes sense. But then if you don't vote and you're still complaining about what's happening, that doesn't make sense. You had the choice.
Have you ever gone to we'll keep the analogy. Go to In-N-Out and then be upset that no one brought you a burger. You didn't walk up to the counter. You didn't tell them what you wanted, but you're upset because you didn't get your double hold the onions, and somehow or another they should have known. The reality is, if you don't participate, you don't get the reward. You want the burger, you pay for the burger, you go to the place and get your burger. In this case, we want certain changes. We vote for those changes. We hold them accountable. We show up and we demand it, and that is what elections do.
And hope everyone can be a part of it. Make sure to vote. That's
Absolutely.
the most important thing.
It starts with voting.
Yeah.
It starts with, here's what I'm going to tell you. Do either one of you play fantasy football?
I do not.
I don't either.
Well, I'm sure some of your listeners do.
They do.
You know what's really interesting about fantasy football? When you just talk about football, you're going to find Raider fans are Raider fans. I mean, they are no joke. Don't mess around with the Raider fan, right? If you call a Raider fan a 49er, they are going to correct you very quickly, right? You wear the jersey, you live by the jersey, heck, you are going to die with the jersey because it's the jersey. It's your colors. That's what you live by. The thing about fantasy football, as an individual, what you do is you look at the 49ers. You look at the Raiders. you look at the Patriots, you look at the Dolphins, you look at the Seahawks, and you pick different players for the different skills that they bring, and you bring together onto your list the dream team. That dream team is your ballot. This is where I'm saying to everyone, get beyond the darn party and get to the people that have proven to you what they're all about. It's not just the jersey that they wear. It's the skill that they bring, the heart that they bring to the game, to the performance. This is what I'm saying. You've got to bring your passion and your concerns to the voting block. Everybody here, you shared with me some of the concerns that the youth sent to you. I'm going to tell you, it's not just the youth that are concerned. This is a concern that is not a Latino thing. It's not an African-American thing. It's not an Armenian thing. It's not a Hmong thing. It is an American thing. It's a California thing, and it includes all of us, young and the more seasoned. Has anyone talked about the fact that we have a baby boomer crisis that's coming? We have this generation that's getting ready to retire, and we do not have enough housing for them. Nobody's talking about that. We're talking about whether or not a boy can be a girl and whether or not feelings are and pronouns. Look, we've got real needs. We've got parts of our community that don't have sidewalks. We have dirt roads. We have dirt spaces that kids cannot. It's dangerous. We have unhoused that are controlling spaces. We have real issues that we need to address, but we can't come at it from this idea that we're victims. This is where we have to take back control and realize we have the power in the power of the pen, but we've got to hold ourselves accountable to show up and put our voice forward. We're expecting to have this be one of the lowest turnout, and we're going to call that a success. We know that we're going to have a low turnout, and we're going to accept that as a reality. And I'm telling you, you are going to talk to your friends, and they're going to tell you, yeah, I didn't vote, but, it doesn't really matter. And we're going to be like, yeah, dude, that's right. But at some point, when we no longer have the freedoms that once were America, I think this is where Ronald Reagan's, it's the scariest quote I've heard. We're about one generation away from telling our kids what it once was to be free. And we're beginning to see it now more and more. And people go, it can't happen, it can't be. Well, do you remember that one day we went to bed, the next morning all of a sudden COVID taught us that we were no longer free people? The idea of America is as easily lost as that. And it's that simple, and we can wake up tomorrow and realize the freedoms that we just took for granted have been lost. And this is why I tell you, I have fought, and there's too many people that have died for our freedoms. This year we celebrate 250 years of being a free nation. We are living the legacy of 250 years of sacrifice to get us to where we're at. It is our choice to be comfortable that allows us to be so uncomfortable. It is time for us to do the uncomfortable thing and exercise our duty. Get off the couch, go submit your vote, have the conversation that may not make you popular, but now you're engaging in that dialogue that requires us to respect the other, but have the different ideas being shared. And that's why I thank you guys for making this opportunity for other people to hear who I am. I may not be everybody's cup of tea, but you won't know that unless you hear from me directly. I'm not the most polished politician because I don't know what it means to be a politician. But I will tell you, I know how to be honest, I know how to work hard, and I know how to be a public servant. That's all I've been all my life.
And we thank you so much for that. That was so well said. Thank you so much, Lorenzo. Let's get on to our next question.
Okay.
You and Petty?
Yeah, thank you. I would also urge our listeners to vote the primaries on June 2nd, and especially in this era of the top two system, every vote's needed to boost a candidate. Our next question is, would you support legislation that would bar legislators from trading stocks?
Absolutely. There should be no doubt that the person that you're sending to serve you is there to serve you and not themselves by having privileged access to information that is there for them to profit. I think it's ridiculous that people go in there with meager salaries and meager savings and come out multimillionaires. There's a system problem there. Now, if a person goes in there and when they come back out, their entire community is now prospering, then I think we've got the right situation. But right now, the problem is we are dying at the vine and barely trying to survive, and they're coming out living large. That's a problem. So that's a simple answer. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And definitely we should be community-based, as I said before, unity.
Absolutely.
So let's all think about each other. I mean, kind of like in the Army, you said yourself, you never leave a brother behind.
No.
So,
But I would also tell you there's a difference between equity and equality.
Definitely.
I want everyone to have equal access, and if you put in the work, you get the reward that comes with it. This idea that whether or not you put in the work, you get the same outcome, that's a problem. Because this is where you're punishing those who work hard and rewarding those who choose not to. And at some point, what you do is you throw the scale off, where everybody wants to sit, and then all of a sudden they find out that, hey, there's no reward. Well, here's the deal, and every farmer knows this. If you want a harvest, you must get up in the morning, plant the seeds, and toil the land, and you do that every single day, even though you don't see anything. You continue to water the crop, you continue to manage the land, because you have a vision for the future. And the one thing I appreciate about farmers is they play the long game, and they understand that they have to do the work if they ever want to see the harvest, and they may have to go through many years of cycle before they're able to fully harvest what they've planted, the crops. Where, as American citizens, we take on that mentality and that accountability and responsibility, then we see things turn. So I believe in equal access and the opportunity for everyone to succeed, but I don't believe in growing government to unfairly source those who don't put the effort. I want everyone to get the skill, and they can put in the effort and then be rewarded accordingly. America is not about an easy life. It's about having the freedom to apply your talent and sacrifice and be rewarded accordingly. And I think that our best days are still ahead. I'm not convinced that America is lost, but this is where I think we as Americans need to remind ourselves, what does it mean to be American? So that's why I make sure that there's a distinct difference between equity and equality, and there's been a lot done to try to force one over the other. I want equality.
And it definitely reminds me of the scripture, you reap what you sow.
Absolutely.
You never sowed, how can you reap?
100%.
And if you sowed and you now harvest, those who chose not to, do they have a claim to what you have? It's like the person who comes over and takes Ewan's over here double with no onions and says, you owe me half. I think not.
No. And so we'll get on to the final
next
question. Yeah, we'll get on to the final question. This one, to end it off, the American dream. Still. The last question for you. You stated that your main goal is protecting the American dream for the next generation. In a time where a lot of young people feel pessimistic or like they cannot get ahead, what does the American dream mean to you today, and why should they still believe in it?
As long as you are here in America, you must believe in it. I'm living the American dream. I'm the kid who came to the United States, lived in an orchard, was a migrant worker. I had the opportunity of growing up with my parents. They taught me the value of hard work in the fields. I was never a victim. My parents never talked to me about being a victim. They told me about the opportunity and the freedom that we have to work hard, to sacrifice, and to be able to earn the opportunities that come with that hard work. They're the ones who made sure that if I wasn't working in the fields, I was going to school, which I will tell you what that translated into. I couldn't wait for summer vacation to be over, because going back to school was so much easier than getting up at dark 30 to get out there and work the fields where it is hot and nobody really treats you very nice because nobody cares what you're thinking. It's whether or not you did your job. I discovered that school was a good place. And because of that, I had the opportunities that came with going to school, learning, developing myself, I enlisted in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps opened my eyes to realizing that sometimes the biggest burdens that you have are not the burdens that have been imposed to you by the people, but instead what you have chosen to embrace and believe for yourself. You see, my mom and dad always told me, Mijo, God has blessed you with everything you need to be successful. But somewhere along the line, I learned to believe that they didn't understand because they didn't have a formal education like I did. So by all accounts, I was smarter than them. What I realized was they were extremely wise and I was extremely foolish. I learned to live down to local expectations. And in doing so, I learned to shackle myself and hold myself back from what I could potentially do. You see, the Marine Corps taught me something really quick. The Marine Corps didn't care what I thought. They wanted me to show them what I could do. And when at some time in the morning when a drill sergeant who is extremely physically fit and very passionate about communicating to you what you will get done, you find that all of a sudden the fears that you have of what you can't do are overwhelmed with the fear of what may happen to you if that drill sergeant communicates to you in a very effective way that you are not doing what he just directed you to do. And that all of a sudden got me to break the shackles of the ideas that told me what I couldn't do. And I followed the direction and the orders that were given to me. And that liberated me from what I thought I couldn't do. And then I discovered I could run. I discovered that I had the skill to be able to do the hard things that I had told myself I couldn't do. Because of that, I went to college. I went and got a graduate degree. I was commissioned as an Army officer. I no longer viewed the world of what I couldn't do. I viewed the world as an opportunity. And I took on every challenge, and every challenge became an opportunity to excel. That attitude of having no limitations also was coupled with the blessing of being selected to serve as a professor of international relations at West Point, one of the premier academic institutions where you're developing the next generation of leaders. And I had the privilege of teaching in that space. I was working with some incredible young men and women who were passionate about serving something bigger than themselves, who lived these values that inspired me to be a better person. And this experience is what I call the American dream, because that same kid who thought he couldn't because he started in a certain place in his life, all of a sudden became the kid who realized he could become anything if he put the work into it and accepted the consequences and the sacrifice that went with it. That American dream is still very much alive. Now, has it been challenged and made a little more difficult? Yes. The people that we've put in office have put in place policies, perhaps with great intentions, but some very horrible consequences and outcomes that have made it difficult. But here's the deal. We too have contributed to that reality with this mentality that this is the only way it works. So much so that we've convinced ourselves that, this is just Fresno. This is just the Valley. This is just the way things are. My vote doesn't matter. We have lulled ourselves into accepting this is the reality. And I'm telling you right now, it's the reality as long as this is what we accept. The difference between what's real and the ideal, do you know what the difference is? You and me. It's what we tolerate. And when we say no more, I promise you, you will see the great California that is still right under our feet. It is still it's in the water. It's in the mountains. It's in the beautiful beaches. It's in the ground itself. The beautiful California with all the resources and all the blessing that God has given us is still here. This is where I'm saying, as fellow Californians, we must choose duty over comfort. Where we choose duty over comfort, we are going to be uncomfortable as we move together to bring the best of California back. And the scoundrels who have put us in this place can realize that their days are no more in positions of authority. It is time that we hold people accountable. It is time For boys to play in boy sports and girls in girl sports, we got to protect that. We got to protect families where parents are the ones who teach the values to our children. They are not there to be taken advantage of and indoctrinated by a system that is disconnected from us. We need the schools to educate, not indoctrinate. We need to bring God back into, for me, I think God is a critical component, and I think God needs to be a part of our life. People who choose not to believe in God, that's the beauty of it. You can choose not to, but your policy does not supersede the fact that God exists, because it is God's will that provides us these inalienable rights, and that's what's communicated in those documents that we call foundational. We must remember what America is about and reinforce that reality. So my challenge to everybody is demand better, demand more from yourself. And where we do that, America and the American dream is not a foreign reality, and it's not something that you have to find somewhere else. It is found right here at home. And the Central Valley and its best days are not in the past. And as far as I'm concerned, I will not stop my work and efforts until I bring and marshal every of my fellow Americans together to make sure that the water flows, the ground grows, and we have the jobs that we need, the opportunities to leverage our talents, the regulation that is removed so businesses thrive, marketing, manufacturing comes to the valley, and the entrepreneurs are incentivized to try their ideas. Those realities are not some crazy dream. It's a reality when we choose to make that happen. So for me, it's the American dream that I've lived, that I want to make sure my kids live, so that my great-grandchildren and the children that I haven't even ever thought of and will never see will still benefit from the reality. This is where we must plant the trees under whose shadow and shade we will not experience, but we still must plant them. And right now, this is our watch. In the military, they call it a watch. And when it's your watch, you're the one that protects so that others can sleep. You're the one who keeps eye out so others can do. Well, right now, this is our watch. We must not fail on our watch, because if we do, we condemn the future generations from living the blessings that we have enjoyed thus far. And so, yes, I do fight for the American dream. And I want to believe that if the American dream is protected, and it starts right here with a Valley First, Valley Strong mentality, the best days of the Valley will bring about the best days of California. And when California becomes the Golden State once again, then the golden era of America will truly dawn at that moment. And I believe that dawning is coming.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Rios. As we close here today, we'd love to get your final statements and also where we could find you.
Thank you so much. And gentlemen, team, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to ask me these questions. Like I told you, my questions aren't as polished as perhaps others are. I haven't served a life of a politician. I have served the life of a father, of a servant, of a man who believes in this great country and realizes the responsibility that I have to make sure that it's protected for my family and every generation thereafter. I've fought for this nation. I'm not going to allow myself to focus on my comfort and manage the decline. Instead, I'm going to jump into the arena and make sure that my hands are dirty, because if we fail, we must fail forward. And we must make sure that if we fail trying. But I will tell you, I have never failed, and I've never allowed any fight to be bigger than who I am. We're Americans. It is time for us to remember who we are. And once we decide to focus on bringing America back, we will see our best days. I'm asking everyone to realize you're not a victim, and this isn't lost. It's time to remember who you are. Step up, step forward. It's time to get off of the sideline, jump into the arena, get your hands dirty together, and let's serve each other in service to this great nation. Vote. Visit riosforcongress.com, RIOS for Congress.com. You can do it with the number, or you can spell it out, FOR, riosforcongress.com. Come, join me, share with me your concerns, and then join me. Get your hands dirty in service to each other. I'm confident that our best days are ahead. Do not sit back and be concerned about what isn't. Instead, step up and do your part to what must be. And I'm confident that our best days are just around the corner.
Thank you so much, Lorenzo Rios, for coming. Thank you guys all for listening. This was the Right Angle Podcast. We hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
Take care.